He should have known it was going to be one of those days when the emergency beacon started playing wedding music. Captain Jules Mercer blinked twice at the screen, leaned forward, and frowned. Why the hell is it playing "Here Comes the Bride" in minor key? His ship, the Farside Mongoose, responded with a cheerful beep and displayed the coordinates of a derelict cruiser in Sapphira 9's upper orbit. Standard distress code, scrambled signal, but someone had clearly decided to wire in music. That was either a glitch or a trap. Well, Jules muttered, pushing himself off his chair with the grace of a hungover sloth. If I die out here, I hope someone recycles my boots. He made the approach cautiously, eyes flicking over the sensors. The cruiser was Varn Tech, elegant and intimidating, like a dagger dipped in blue fire, with damage that suggested a messy skirmish, or possibly bad parking. No life signs, no heat. Just a gaping hull breach and a signal that wouldn't stop humming the wedding tune. Jules docked with practiced ease, checked the seal, and floated into the wreckage armed with his pulse pistol, a med kit, and a half-eaten protein bar he'd forgotten in his jacket. "Hello?" he called into the echoing interior. "Anyone alive? Dead but chatty? Preferably not a hallucination?" The only answer was the hum of broken systems and a faint hiss of depressurization. He moved through the twisted corridors, his boots magnet clamping to the floor, until he saw her. At first he thought it was a statue, then the statue groaned. A woman, an alien woman, blue-skinned, armored in the kind of ceremonial plating only nobles or lunatics wore in combat. One side of her face was smeared with shimmering silver blood. Her breathing was shallow. Her pulse, well, she didn't have one. Not that he could find. She stirred when he approached, her eyes flickering open. Pale gold irises locked onto his, and for one brief, horrifying moment, Jules felt like he'd just accidentally proposed. "You are not of Varn," she croaked. "I get that a lot," Jules said. "Try not to die. I'm terrible at paperwork." She tried to sit up, failed, collapsed with a sound that was half growl, half guttural insult. "Oh, good," he muttered. "You're one of the snarky ones." With some effort, and what he later told himself was absolutely not flirting, Jules got her over his shoulder and back to the mongoose. She didn't pass out, unfortunately. No, she insisted on asking questions between pained grunts, like why his armor looked like it came from a salvage yard, and why his ship smelled like fermented poultry. "That's air freshener, thank you very much," he said, guiding her into the med bay. She growled at the scanner. "It's for checking your vitals, not stealing your soul." A full scan showed multiple fractures, plasma burns, and at least one organ that pulsed to its own rhythm like it had a jazz career. Jules did what he could, wrapped wounds, stabilized her vitals, set a cracked collarbone. She hissed but didn't scream. Warriors like her didn't. She dozed off eventually, wrapped in his old flight jacket, muttering something in Varnish that the translator interpreted as, "Human smells like overcooked bread." By the time her kin arrived, Jules had already named her Crashy, which he really shouldn't have said out loud when their warship materialized over the horizon. They boarded fast, all ceremonial armor, high-borne stairs, and cheekbones sharp enough to file knives. When they found her alive, smudged, bruised, but grinning faintly, they stared at him like he'd just cuddled a tiger and given it tea. The matron, tall and terrifying in robes that shimmered like oil, stepped forward. "You saved Arthalia." Jules nodded. "I mean, technically, it was mostly instinct and duct tape. She lives because of you." "Right, so you're welcome?" There was a pause, then a declaration that would haunt him more than any enemy ever had. "You are honorable. You will marry her." Jules blinked. "I'm sorry. What now?" Thalea opened one eye, looked at him and smirked. "I hope your species does weddings with knives." Jules tried everything. He explained cultural differences. He explained the concept of sarcasm. He even tried faking a terminal allergy to alien brides. None of it worked. The Varn delegation remained unmoved, standing in intimidating silence like statues carved from indifference and ancestral pride. One of them coughed once. Jules cheered too early. It was just a signal for someone to bring in the ceremonial engagement armor. with glitter. Now he was on their ship, the Varnblade, being fitted for what could only be described as a cross between a tuxedo and a light mech suit. Thaleia sat nearby, bandages around her ribs, watching the whole thing with mild amusement and a snack in hand that looked suspiciously like dehydrated space fish. He whispered, "Any chance I can wake up and this is all a fever dream?" She raised a brow. "I assure you, if this were your dream, I would not be wearing pants." Jules sputtered. The tailor tightened something on his thigh, and he squeaked audibly. Later, while limping through the ship's ornate halls, he tried to take in the situation. The Varnblade was a marvel, a living blend of biotech and starlight, with walls that pulsed faintly as if breathing. Every corridor was lined with artifacts from wars past: helmets, banners, a few ominous skulls, and, randomly, a signed human coffee mug that read, "Number 1, Grandma." He didn't ask. "So," he said, walking beside Thaleia as she slowly adjusted to movement, "just to confirm, your people believe saving someone equals marrying them?" She nodded. "We do not believe. We honor. Your act was seen by the spirits, and by my aunt, who is more frightening." "Is there an unmarrying ritual?" "Only death." Jules stopped walking. She smirked again. "Joking." "Oh, thank God." "Mostly joking." He groaned. "You're not making this easy." "It is not meant to be easy. You are meant to be worthy." They arrived at what the crew called the Harmony Chamber, a grand circular hall with floating, crystalline panels that shifted to display Varn history, art, and very enthusiastic marriage proposals. Jules stood awkwardly as the clan matriarch addressed the assembly. He thought they might open with a warm welcome, or maybe a light buffet. Instead, the first topic was dowry negotiations. Apparently, Jules was now worth 17 plasma rifles, 2 Star Beast pelts, and an old engine core that no longer worked but smelled like victory. He raised a hand. "Can I trade myself for a new hyperdrive instead?" Nobody laughed, except Thaleia. Her laughter echoed through the chamber, deep and amused. "You are strange," she said when it faded. "But you make my chest ache, not in the stabbing way, the other way." "You mean emotionally?" "Yes, very annoying." Back in the guest quarters, Jules stared at the ceiling while the AI translated a scroll of pre-union expectations. Apparently, he was expected to prove his worth through trials. One involved dance, another poetry. A third one simply said, "Endurance of the luminous pit." He looked at Thaleia, who was now reclining with her boots off, examining a human snack bar like it was alien tech. "I'm not good at rituals." She tossed him a look. "You climbed inside a dying ship to save a stranger. That is all the ritual I need." He sighed. "Do you at least get a say in this?" "I do. And I say yes." He blinked. She stood and walked over, stopping close. "You are kind, stubborn, and very loud when startled." "Hey!" "And when I woke up and saw you, I did not feel shame for surviving. That is new to me." Jewel looked up at her, unsure of what to say. "Besides," she added, "if we do not bond, my cousin Syrinx will try again. He drools when he talks." "I'm starting to understand your people better." She grinned. "Then be ready, human. The first trial is soon." "What is it?" She leaned in. "Diplomatic tea with my grandmother. She once ended a war because someone mispronounced her name." Jules whispered, "Can I go back to the burning ship instead?" Jules adjusted the collar of his ceremonial robe for the 7th time and still couldn't figure out if it was choking him or just aggressively hugging his neck. It shimmered like melted moonlight and smelled faintly of roasted kelp. He suspected that was intentional. "Do not tug at the neckline," Thaleia said, walking beside him in armor that looked less like battle gear and more like a dare. "It signals nervousness or mild digestion issues." "Great," he muttered. "So if I faint, they'll think I have gas." They approached the gathering hall, a place that reeked of dignity, ancient oaths, and very expensive furniture. It was the trial of diplomacy, which sounded innocent enough until Jules found out it involved navigating family politics among 6 of the most terrifying matriarchs in the galaxy. And tea. Lots of tea. He sat as instructed, legs folded in an uncomfortable position designed by ancient sadists, and waited as Thalea's grandmother entered the chamber. Lady Avara moved like she'd once won wars by glaring at people until their ships imploded. "You," she said, eyeing Jules. "The human." Jules stood. "Captain Jules Mercer, honor to meet you. Please don't incinerate me." Lady Avara's eyes narrowed. "Speak plainly. Your tongue dances like a drunken bird." He sat back down. "Right. Thank you for the hospitality. I'm still adjusting. My last family gathering involved a lot less armor and slightly more potato salad." There was a long pause, then, unexpectedly, a chuckle. From her. It sounded like a glacier cracking. "The human has wit. Good. The last suitor had shoulders, but no spine." One of the other elders snorted. Another leaned forward and asked about his lineage, his profession, and if he had any genetic anomalies. When he mentioned surviving a plasma storm without a shield and a minor addiction to synthetic cheese crackers, they nodded approvingly. The tea arrived, glowing, purple, and slightly effervescent. Jules sipped and immediately regretted it. "Is it supposed to taste like regret and bubblegum?" "Proper reaction," Ivara said. "It is fermented memory root. Shows your sincerity." Thalea, seated beside him, whispered, "If you vomit, aim for the corner rug. It belonged to Serix." Jules smiled. "I think I love you." She blinked once. "I will record that for legal purposes." The rest of the trial passed in a blur of questions, layered metaphors, and at least one poem duel between elderly sisters. By the end, Jules was mentally exhausted and possibly hallucinating a small singing lizard in the chandelier. Back in the quarters, he flopped onto the bed, robe askew, hair wild. "I think I won," he mumbled into the blanket. "You survived," Thalia said. "Among my people, that is better." She sat beside him, quietly running a cloth over a silver blade. Her posture was relaxed now, less warrior, more companion. "You didn't have to go through this," he said. "If you told them no—" "I did not want to say no," she cut in. "Not because of duty, because of you." He turned his head toward her, eyes searching hers. "You are unlike others," she said. "You insult our tea and charm our matriarchs. You treat my injuries with soft hands. And when I wake beside you, I do not feel alone." Jules swallowed. "Thalea, She tossed a pillow at him. "Enough. Rest now. Tomorrow is trial 2. He caught it. "I'm afraid to ask." "Poetry combat," she said with complete seriousness. "You must compose a verse that moves a warrior to tears." "Can I bribe him with snacks instead?" "That would only make him weep faster." He groaned and buried his face in the pillow. From across the room, her soft laughter echoed. Not the cold, sharp bark from before, but something warmer, looser, like the sound of someone finally, slowly, learning how to laugh. Jules stood at the center of the circle of voices with a notepad clutched in one sweaty hand and a protein bar in the other. The warriors of House Varn sat silently around him in a ring of carved stone seats, their expressions ranging from boredom to full-blown skepticism. In front of him sat the appointed judge of tears, an enormous Varn soldier named Kor, with a battle scar over one eye and the emotional range of a vending machine. Thalia leaned against a nearby pillar, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "This is trial 2, the herald declared. "The ritual of verse. The outsider must stir the warrior's heart with words or risk forfeiture of bond." Jules cleared his throat. "Okay, no pressure. Just poetry, in front of aliens who can throw me into orbit." Someone in the crowd coughed. Kor did not blink. He looked at his notes, then looked at the crowd, then tossed the notes aside. "Fine," he said. "You want poetry? I'll give you poetry. This one's called Ode to the Warrior Who Broke My Arm During a Hug." A few raised brows, he began. "Your grip is like steel, your boots are like dread. You once punched a man, and he forgot how to read." Someone stifled a laugh. Kor's brow twitched. "You swing your blade with elegant doom, but your idea of romance is cleaning blood with a broom." Another twitch, a smirk in the back row. Jules took a breath and glanced at Thalia. She hadn't moved. You call it bonding, I call it bruised. Yet when you look at me like that, my organs get confused. A ripple of sound rolled through the circle. Snorts, half laughs, one audible giggle from an elder. Kor blinked, leaned forward, and released a single heavy sigh. Talea stepped forward. You made him sigh. That is more emotion than he showed at his own brother's funeral. The herald stood. The outsider has succeeded. The ritual is satisfied. Jules exhaled. Great. Do I get a medal or just another anxiety attack? That night, the clan held a celebratory feast. Jules sat beside Talea, poking at a plate of something that looked like gelatin with teeth. Alien music filled the air, rhythmic, haunting, occasionally interrupted by what sounded like a malfunctioning cow. Talea sipped her drink and eyed him. You are adapting. I'm surviving. Barely. You joked to deflect, but I saw your eyes when they laughed. They laughed at my poetry, not my soul. Same thing, he smiled. You know, I used to think the universe was a big empty place, just stars and silence. Now I'm here eating giggling jelly cubes with a warrior princess who thinks sighing counts as crying. She leaned in slightly. Do you regret coming? I regret not bringing more deodorant. She laughed. It startled a nearby elder. As the night wore on, someone brought out the bonding sashes. Jewel was told they were symbolic and completely non-binding. Except in 3 systems, Talea added, where wearing it equals mutual inheritance. Oh, good, he muttered. I always wanted to inherit a ceremonial spear collection and an angry cousin. Syrinx returned the next morning. He arrived aboard a glistening assault cruiser with banners trailing behind it like smugness in ribbon form. The cousin in question, broad-shouldered and twice as loud, stepped into the hall with a smirk that practically screamed unrequested flexing. I challenge, he said, loud enough to rattle the teacups, for the right to Thalea's bond. Everyone froze. Jules nearly choked on his drink. You already tried this, Talea said coolly, and you lost. Syrinx's smile widened. This time I challenge him. Jules raised a hand. Hi, me? Really? Are you sure? There's a very nice shrub outside who looks single and emotionally available. The matriarchs conferred. Talea stood, blade at her hip, fury dancing behind her calm eyes. But she said nothing. The ruling came down. Trial 3. The Gauntlet of Honor. Jules slumped. I knew I should have studied law instead of space engineering. Talea looked at him, voice low. You don't have to win, Jules. You just have to survive. He stared at her. Great. That's the slogan they put on gravestones. The Gauntlet of Honor began with a gong made from the shell of an extinct space mollusk and only got weirder from there. Jules stood at the starting line in full trial gear, which was basically a fusion of armor plating, ceremonial ribbons, and an emergency oxygen tank duct taped to his spine. He looked like a heavily decorated dishwasher. Talea stood nearby, silent, but her hands clenched tighter than usual. Okay, he muttered to himself. All I have to do is make it through a course designed for alien warlords. Easy. I've stubbed my toe harder than this. Probably. Syrinx, already shirtless and oiled for no apparent reason, was doing stretches like this was a prelude to an interpretive dance. He flexed unnecessarily. The elders watched from a balcony, sipping something that bubbled ominously. The first phase was the Wall of Trials, 20 meters of vertical climb over plasma-heated stone with robotic wasps hovering nearby. Syrinx scaled it in seconds. Jules got halfway up, slipped, and clung to the side, yelling, I regret everything. One of the wasps buzzed too close. In a panic, he threw a protein bar at it. The wasp scanned it, beeped, then flew off to enjoy the snack. Somehow Jules made it to the top, mostly fueled by fear and spite. Next was the Path of Balance. Narrow beams suspended over an energy pit that shouted insults based on the walker's psychological profile. Nice haircut, Jules, the pit growled. Do all humans style their fear into bangs? He shuffled forward. Shut up. I like my bangs. Syrinx danced across the beams like a peacock in 0G. Jules wobbled, stumbled, and somehow didn't fall, mostly thanks to a sudden tailwind from a passing maintenance drone. The final phase was the trial of reflection, entering the chamber of echoes where the competitor must face a holographic projection of their worst self. Sarek stepped in, screamed, ran out 5 minutes later, mumbling about betrayed muscles. Jules stepped in. The chamber lit up. A figure appeared, himself but wearing a suit, holding a spreadsheet and talking about insurance plans. He stared. Is that me in sales? The reflection smirked. You gave up. You quit flying. Jules narrowed his eyes. That's not who I am anymore. You ran from connection. I crash-landed into it. Big difference. The reflection flickered, frowned, then nodded, and vanished. He stepped out of the chamber into silence, then slow applause. Then, unexpectedly, cheering. Thalea walked toward him, pride in something softer behind her eyes. You faced it, she said. I argued with a corporate version of myself and survived emotional sabotage, he replied, and I still want a nap. Sarek stood, breathing heavily, gaze unreadable. Then he stepped forward, bowed stiffly, and said, I yield. The wedding was held under Sapphira 9's twin moons, surrounded by Varn banners, humans on holocalls, and a confused priest who had to learn 5 alien dialects overnight. Jules wore armor he didn't understand and grinned like a fool. Thalea stood beside him in ceremonial, silk-threaded plating, her smile smaller but no less real. When the rites ended, she leaned close and whispered, Still certain this isn't a fever dream? He squeezed her hand. If it is, don't wake me. Later, as fireworks crackled across the sky and a small alien child tried to ride a ceremonial beast like a pony, Jules sat beside Thalea on the observation deck. The stars stretched around them like old friends. I never thought I'd end up here, he said, on a foreign moon, wearing 50 pounds of ribbon. You saved a stranger, fought your reflection, convinced my grandmother not to gut you. I believe this is called growth, he smirked. I believe it's called narrowly avoiding doom. She rested her head on his shoulder. Still, you are not the same man who drifted through space alone. He looked at her. And you're not the same woman who thought dying alone was noble. The silence between them was warm. By the way, he added, I learned something important today. I'm never doing poetry combat again, she laughed. Not even for our anniversary? Maybe, but only if the prize is cake.